Welcome back to Mr. Charles Stories, where the quietest people often carry the loudest truths. Before we begin, think about this. Have you ever caught someone lying without saying a single word? Not with anger, not with shouting, but with silence so sharp it made the liar flinch. That's how this story begins. Today's story isn't about revenge that screams. It's about a woman who never raised her voice because she didn't have to. If you believe in quiet power, in strength that doesn't need noise, then stick around. And while you're here, hit the like button, subscribe, and tell us in the comments, what would you do if you caught your spouse cheating and they didn't know you knew? Let's begin. Celine Caro's world didn't fall apart. It adjusted. The floors of her Upper East Side brownstone didn't creak. The glass cabinets never slammed. Her closets were organized by category, season, and mood. She didn't own things she didn't need. She didn't keep things she didn't trust. That included people. Corbin Linwood used to be the exception. Now, he was just well-dressed noise in the background. For 6 years, their marriage sat on a foundation of social alignment. He was Manhattan real estate's rising star. She was the polished strategy consultant who made egos step back with a single look. To the world, they were perfect. But perfect doesn't always mean intimate. By year 3, their relationship started to feel like an acquisition. By year 5, Celine knew, emotionally, he had liquidated her. She didn't accuse. She didn't chase. She watched. And when you're as precise as Celine, watching is enough. It started with smells. A cologne that lingered long after his suits returned from the dry cleaner. Something she hadn't bought him. Something too musky, too new. Then, late meetings, last-minute client dinners, a hotel charge in Chelsea for a night when he claimed he was in Jersey. She never checked his phone. She didn't need to. Corbin wasn't clever. He was lazy with his lies. But Celine didn't react. No slammed drawers. No confrontation in the hallway. Instead, she bought a new notebook. Not for journaling. For planning. You don't fix a cracked wall with noise. You study the fault line. You measure the pressure. You wait until the collapse is inevitable. Then you step aside. Corbin mistook her silence for grace. For tolerance. For weakness. But Celine wasn't enduring him. She was observing him. Her restraint wasn't surrender. It was calculation. And it all shifted on a Thursday afternoon. Just after her second espresso, and before her Zoom with the downtown rezoning board. Subject line, private launch invite, Cress Group development. At first, she assumed it was generic PR, until she saw the sender. Dorian Cress. She hadn't heard that name in 8 years. Celine had once worked as a junior consultant on a rezoning project backed by his group. She remembered how he carried a room without demanding it. How he waited before speaking, but when he did, everyone leaned in. He never flirted, but he noticed her. Not her outfit, not her figure, her mind. After one proposal meeting, she'd asked a question that made a dozen men in suits uncomfortable. Later, he approached her quietly and said, "You don't just walk into rooms, you rearrange them." She'd never forgotten that line, or him. The event was at the Orium, a rooftop venue that looked out over the city Corbin once promised they'd conquer together. Celine didn't tell anyone she was going. She didn't ask permission. She chose a green silk dress, clean lines, no embellishments, hair pulled back, simple earrings, and a gaze that said, "I'm not here to impress. I'm here to remember who I am." She stepped into the night alone. The rooftop glittered with light and wealth. Champagne flowed into crystal flutes. Men shook hands with sharp smiles. Women exchanged compliments through teeth clenched by competition. Every detail screamed curated opulence, from the gold-rimmed candles to the imported orchids lining the glass railings. Celine walked in with a posture built from precision. She didn't fidget with her dress or glance around nervously. She took her steps slowly, heel to toe, each movement deliberate. Let them notice her. Let them guess who she came with. Let them wonder. She wasn't there to reclaim Corbin. She was there to remember herself. She made it 7 steps past the entry curtain before she saw her. Ray Nolan, slouched in a corner booth like she owned it. Red lipstick smeared onto a flute of Prosecco. Loud laugh. Low neckline. Diamond necklace glinting under the chandeliers. One Celine recognized instantly. Corbin had told her he returned that necklace, that it wasn't the right fit. He lied, and the lie was now draped across Ray's throat like a confession. Ray noticed her. Of course she did. The smirk came fast, curling up the corner of her mouth. Confident, meant to sting. She expected Celine to shrink, to look away, maybe cry, maybe flinch. Celine did none of those things. She walked straight to the table. Her steps didn't pause. Her face didn't flicker. She stopped at the edge of the booth, waited until Ray looked directly into her eyes and said, "Whatever you think you've won, enjoy it. You'll pay the maintenance costs soon enough." Not a word more. She turned and stepped directly into the presence of Dorian Cress. He didn't announce himself, didn't clear his throat. He simply stood there, watching, tall, tailored, restrained. A man who didn't need to prove wealth, because his stillness did it for him. "Good evening," he said, as if greeting an equal. Celine gave the slightest nod. "Dorian." He extended his arm. She hesitated for a beat, then placed her hand lightly on his forearm. He guided her away from the main floor, past clutches of industry titans and gallery heiresses, into a quieter lounge with muted lighting and soft jazz. She exhaled only once they sat. "You came," he said. "You invited me," she replied. "I didn't expect you to accept." "Neither did I." Silence stretched, not awkward, just full. She scanned the skyline through the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city blink back at her. "I remember your question," he said. She turned to him. "At the zoning meeting, everyone avoided the equity clause. You brought it up with numbers to back it. You remember that?" She asked, a little surprised. "Most people speak to impress. You spoke to correct a course." "I don't forget people like that." He didn't mention Corbin, didn't ask why she was alone, didn't reference the drama unraveling 10 feet away. Instead, he said, "I'm building again, by the Hudson. Multi-tower. Green tech integration. Private investors are watching." "But it's stuck." "Zoning?" she asked. He nodded. "And vision. Too many architects. Not enough clarity. I need someone who sees angles before anyone else does." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a cream envelope. Thick, sealed. She took it without opening it. "Why me? You've got the kind of eye that rewrites rooms without redrawing walls." She looked at him for a long moment, then smiled. "Barely. You still speak in blueprints. You always understood them." The servers began circulating with plated desserts, gold-flecked tarts and spiced chocolate truffles. He didn't offer her one. He didn't offer small talk either. "I'm not offering you a job," he said. "I'm offering you authority. That's a risk. It always is. But I'd rather risk clarity than gamble on noise." She didn't give him an answer. Not yet. But she tucked the envelope into her clutch. He stood. "I'm going to make a few rounds. Stay or leave whenever you want. But if you decide to join the project, email's inside." Celine stood with him. She extended her hand. He shook it. Firm, respectful, equal. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For not mentioning what everyone else would have." Dorian glanced toward the main room. Ray was still in the booth. Corbin hadn't arrived yet. But it didn't matter. "I didn't come here to talk about your husband," he said. "I came here to talk to you." And with that, he left her in the quiet. Celine didn't return to the main floor. She left through a side entrance. No drama. No eyes following her. The air outside was cold, but she felt clear. When she got home, she didn't take off her dress. She sat on the edge of the bed and opened the envelope. Inside was a letter of intent, her name typed at the top. A consulting offer for a high-level strategist role, timeline, scope, and pay that doubled what Corbin ever brought into their shared accounts. No flattery, no extra words. Just a single handwritten line below the proposal: "You rearrange rooms." Let's rebuild a city. Celine stared at the letter and smiled. She didn't cry. She didn't laugh. She just felt ready. She placed the letter next to her nightstand and reached for her phone. She didn't call Dorian. She called her lawyer. "Draw up the papers," she said. Clean, quiet, expedited. The lawyer didn't ask why, and Celine didn't explain. There was nothing to explain. The decision had already been made. She didn't need to destroy Corbin. She just needed to leave the structure he'd taken for granted and build one he couldn't enter. Tomorrow would start a new foundation, and this time the blueprint was hers. The morning sunlight sliced clean through the floor-length windows of Celine's brownstone. No curtains drawn, no shadows left to hide in. She moved through the silence barefoot, coffee brewing behind her, phone on silent. Her lawyer had confirmed receipt. The divorce papers were already in motion. No press release, no warning to Corbin. Just facts, just finality. Celine didn't feel triumphant. She felt focused. Her days shifted fast. Meetings with Dorian's urban development team filled her calendar within 48 hours. The email chain alone had more power than anything Corbin had offered her in 6 years of marriage. Where Corbin made her feel managed, Dorian's team made her feel mobilized. By the end of the week, Celine sat at a 24-seat conference table on the 36th floor of Crest Group's downtown tower. It was her first day in the project briefing, and already the room carried a buzz. Architects, financial planners, city consultants, even 2 former lobbyists sat waiting for her notes on the design phase. Not one of them looked surprised she was there, because Dorian had set the tone before she arrived. She glanced over the early project renderings: clean towers, integrated gardens, sustainable materials. The concept was bold, but the zoning implications were messy. Halfway through the discussion, someone interrupted her mid-sentence. A man, late 40s, expensive tie, the kind of polished expert who built his ego into every pitch deck. "I just think we've already covered this angle," he said. "With respect, Celine, we've run these calculations before." She didn't raise her voice, didn't change posture. She simply looked at him and asked, "Were your calculations based on the new freight line adjustments from Midtown South's redirect?" He blinked, said nothing, because the answer was no. Celine didn't smile. She didn't need to. She clicked her remote, advanced the slide and said, "Then we haven't covered this." The room went still. Dorian, seated 2 spots down, didn't interrupt. He didn't explain her credentials or cushion the moment. He let it land. Celine walked the room through her alternate logistics flow: revised vendor timing, noise management requirements, a subtle shift in delivery routes that saved 7% on cost projections and shaved 3 weeks off the final build phase. She finished, clicked off the remote, and sat. No one interrupted again. Dorian closed the session 5 minutes early. As people filtered out, he remained in his chair, arms relaxed. Celine gathered her notes, slow and steady. He waited. When only they remained, he said, "You move like a scalpel. I was trained to be the blade, not the noise. I see that." Celine looked at him. "You didn't step in. You didn't need me to." She nodded once, and something in her posture eased. Afterward, they didn't go out for drinks. No flirty laughter in the hallway. No forced bonding. Dorian respected time like currency. He never wasted hers. The next day she was back in that room, this time at the head of the table. The same man who interrupted her the day before didn't speak until she called on him. When he did, his voice was measured, controlled. Respect was a powerful currency, and Celine was now rich in it. That afternoon, Corbin called her. She didn't answer. He called again, then sent a message. "I'm confused. What's going on?" Celine stared at the text. She didn't reply. A few hours later, her lawyer forwarded a message. Corbin's team wanted to clarify intent behind the divorce filing. They claimed he was blindsided, that maybe they could resolve things outside court. Celine highlighted the email, pressed delete. That night, she returned home to find an envelope under her front door. Her doorman said Corbin had dropped it off himself. Inside was a letter, not handwritten. Typed, "Celine, I know you're angry. I know I've made mistakes. But this doesn't have to be the end. Can we at least talk before we blow everything up?" See, there were no apologies, no accountability, just a plea wrapped in ego. She folded the letter once, neatly, and placed it back in the envelope. Then she tossed it in the shredder. When someone shows you their ceiling, you don't repaint it. You leave the building. Celine didn't burn the past. She archived it. Corbin wasn't her enemy. He was just the last person who underestimated her. She wasn't running anymore. She was redesigning the floor plan. And she wasn't doing it alone. Dorian sent her a single message that evening. "Updated design files in your inbox. I trust your notes. Let's move fast." She smiled. Not because of the flattery, but because of the trust. Real power doesn't ask for permission. It gives you a seat and listens when you speak. And for the first time in years, Celine knew she had never needed Corbin's approval. She just needed a better blueprint. Celine didn't celebrate. She adjusted. Power didn't feel like thunder. It felt like precision. Quiet control of the variables, the meetings, the rooms. She didn't speak often, but when she did, heads turned. Not because she was loud, because her words had weight. By the second week, her suggestions were being forwarded between departments. Dorian's COO added her directly to executive roundtables. A former city planner from Chicago asked to shadow her for insight on traffic analysis models. People weren't just listening, they were learning from her. One morning, after reviewing vendor reports, she found a handwritten note slipped inside the folder. "You've made more impact in 10 days than some people do in a fiscal year. DC." It wasn't romantic, it was respectful. That made all the difference. Her phone buzzed again. Corbin. Third attempt today. She didn't pick up. 10 minutes later, a voicemail. "I don't get it, Celine. You're blowing up our life over what? Because I made a mistake? Come on. You don't even act like you care. We were good. We had plans. You're being cold. No apology. No reflection. Just noise." She deleted the voicemail before it finished. Later that evening, as she was leaving the Crest Group tower, Dorian caught up with her in the elevator. "Heading home?" he asked. "I need quiet," she replied. "Walk or car?" "Walk." The elevator opened. He followed. They didn't speak until they reached street level. The noise of the city swirled around them, but between them was stillness. "I want to ask you something," he said, not looking at her. She nodded. "Would you be open to co-leading the Midtown phase? Public-facing. You'll be the strategist. I'll back infrastructure." Celine didn't answer immediately. She paused at the corner, looked both ways, then said, "Why me?" "You see angles most people never spot. You challenge assumptions without making it personal. That's rare. Sounds like you're complimenting yourself." He smiled. A little. They crossed the street. Steam rose from a manhole cover behind them. Dorian kept his pace steady, never walking ahead. "I'm not trying to drag you into my spotlight," he said. "I'm trying to build something alongside you." Celine looked at him. Sharp jaw. Calm gaze. No flinching. No bluffing. "I'll think about it," she said. "That's all I ask." They reached her block. He didn't push. He didn't linger. "I'll send you the outline in the morning." She nodded. "I'll read it." He turned to leave, then paused. "You don't owe anyone softness, Celine. You're allowed to choose sharpness. Precision is power." She stood there after he left, the words hanging in the air like scaffolding. The next day, she walked into her brownstone and saw the divorce documents waiting by the door. Finalized. Clean. Stamped. Corbin hadn't contested. Maybe he thought she'd come back. Maybe he realized she wouldn't. Either way, it was done. Celine poured herself a drink. No music. No distractions. She stood by her window and looked out over the city's skyline. One building in particular caught her eye. The Crest Group Tower. Sleek. Tall. built without apology. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She simply felt aligned. Later that night, her phone lit up with a message. Not from Corbin. From Dorian. Midtown Co. lead doc attached. Let me know if you want your name on the masthead. No pressure. Just a blueprint. And this time, it had her name at the top. If you believe quiet confidence beats loud excuses, this story is yours. Drop a comment. She didn't need to scream. She just signed the papers. Like, share, and subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories for more stories where respect replaces noise and power moves in silence. Celine signed the Midtown contract on a Thursday morning. She wore a slate-grey blouse, sleeves rolled just enough to show control. Her signature was steady, no hesitation, no emotion wasted. She slid the papers back across the table to Dorian, without theatrics. He looked over her signature, nodded once, then passed them to his assistant. "Welcome to the next phase," he said. She didn't smile, just replied, "Let's keep the foundation clean." By noon, her name was officially tied to a billion-dollar project. Not in footnotes, not under consulting advisor, on the masthead, equal to Dorian. Public-facing, responsible. The office buzzed as the announcement went live. Press releases were already drafted. An exclusive profile was in the works for an architecture and finance journal. But Celine didn't pause for interviews. She went straight to the site maps. The Hudson phase involved 5 towers, 3 green zones, and a logistics puzzle that had stalled for months. Supply chains, noise permits, structural access. Nothing had lined up right, but she saw patterns where others saw problems. She closed the blinds, laid out 4 overlapping blueprints, and started redrawing entry routes. Half an hour in, someone knocked lightly. Dorian stepped in, coffee in hand, no assistant trailing him. "I figured you'd skip the internal toast," he said, setting the cup beside her. "Celebrating something that's not finished makes people lazy." He watched her mark a segment in red ink. "You're already redrafting their logistics sequence. It's inefficient. I know. That's why I gave it to you." She glanced at him. "Any pushback yet?" 2 VPs wanted to know why we elevated a consultant to co-lead. I told them you aren't a consultant. You're a scalpel, and they accepted that. They did when I forwarded them your redesign on the Eastern Loading Corridor. You saved them $3.2 million in potential vendor overages. She nodded once, then returned to her map. He lingered for a moment, then added quietly, "You're already being copied, Celine. I'm not interested in imitation. I know. That's why it's working." He left her in silence. By the time she looked up, 2 hours had passed. 3 updated route paths were done. Vendor briefings were rearranged. She'd sent 8 emails, all precise, all action-driven. At 4 p.m., she checked her phone for the first time. 3 missed calls from Corbin. No voicemails this time. "Just a text, please, Celine. I'm falling apart here." She didn't reply. She didn't even delete it. She just turned the phone over and pushed it to the far edge of the desk. That night, she walked home from the Crest Tower. The wind off the Hudson was sharp. Her hair came loose in the breeze, but she didn't stop to fix it. Her heels clicked against the sidewalk. Sharp, fast, final. At home, her doorman stopped her at the elevator. "Miss Carrow, your husband was here earlier." She tilted her head. "He asked to be let upstairs. I told him that wouldn't happen unless we confirmed with you. He left upset." "Thank you," she said simply. Inside her apartment, nothing was touched. No sign of intrusion, just clean surfaces, soft lighting, and the faint scent of bergamot she preferred over Corbin's cologne. She opened a window. The city breathed beneath her. 10 minutes later, the intercom buzzed. She ignored it. It buzzed again, then a 4th time. She walked to it calmly, pressed the speaker, and said nothing. Corbin's voice came through, breathless. "Celine, please, I'm downstairs. I know I messed up. But you're not even answering. I went by your office. They told me you're leading something with Cress. You're working with Dorian now. What is happening?" She didn't respond. He kept going. "Is this about Ray?" Look, it wasn't serious. She doesn't mean anything. You know I get distracted. We can fix this. You and me. We've always been good together, right? Please. Still. She said nothing. Then, a pause. A different tone. You're really gonna throw this all away? After everything we built? She pressed end, turned off the speaker, walked away. Some things weren't built. They were tolerated. And toleration wasn't a foundation. She didn't feel shaken. She didn't feel relieved. She just felt aligned. That night, she made risotto from scratch. No music. Just the sound of simmering broth and her own breath. Halfway through dinner, her phone lit up. Dorian, we got zoning approval for Towers B and D. That's you. Congratulations. She stared at the message. This time, she allowed herself a small smile. She typed back, good. Let's move the steel order up by 2 weeks. No celebration, no sentiment, just momentum. The next day, Corbin showed up at her office building. He wasn't let upstairs, so he waited in the lobby. Celine saw him through the glass when she arrived. He looked like a man falling apart. Tie crooked, shirt wrinkled, hair messy in a way that wasn't stylish, just desperate. He rushed toward her as the doors opened. Celine, please, we need to talk. She didn't pause, didn't speed up. She walked straight past him and said, without turning, you're not my husband. You're a man who broke the lease. Corbin froze. She didn't. The elevator closed behind her. Upstairs, her assistant handed her a new slate of vendor proposals. She reviewed all 6, approved 2, rejected 4. Then she redrafted the timeline for the next 2 tower phases. By lunch, she had 3 more calls scheduled, with people who didn't call her cold. They called her precise, effective, indispensable. That night, Dorian invited her to a small meeting in a private lounge uptown. Not drinks, not dinner, just strategy. He showed her new renderings. She showed him zoning adjustments. They debated one logistics angle for 20 minutes. When it ended, she stood. He didn't offer to walk her home. He simply said, if you need more room to build, say the word. We'll expand. She didn't say thank you. She just met his eyes and replied, then clear the clutter. He smiled. Already started. Outside, the city didn't know her name yet. But soon it would stand on buildings she helped erect. Not because she screamed, because she signed. And when the final beam was raised on Tower B, it would be her initials engraved beneath it. Not his, hers. By Monday, the Midtown development team was moving faster than it had in 6 months. Celine's logistical models were already being implemented. One of her proposed changes to the vendor rotation eliminated 4 unnecessary contracts and consolidated the pipeline into 2 exclusive partnerships. That alone saved the project over $500,000. The finance team flagged it as exceptional optimization. Dorian simply called it expected. The internal team chat now referred to her with a new shorthand, SC. Not just her initials, but a brand. When her name showed up in email threads, people didn't wait to respond. They adjusted. They reviewed. They followed her lead. She didn't demand respect. She worked in a way that made disrespect feel foolish. Meanwhile, Corbin had gone silent, at least outwardly. She knew that silence wasn't peace. It was positioning. But she wasn't concerned. Her lawyer had locked everything down. Finances, property, even the penthouse he claimed to own outright had been quietly co-financed with equity from her consulting firm. That would be handled soon enough. Celine's mornings started earlier now. 5 a.m. Journaling, black coffee, zoning maps before the sun was up. She didn't operate from reaction anymore. Her life was proactive, structured, hers. That week, Dorian invited her to a private pre-construction tour of the Midtown site. It wasn't flashy. Just 2 hard hats, 1 clipboard, and 3 hours of walking the skeleton of what would soon become the city's most efficient mixed-use structure. No cameras, no assistants, no champagne. They didn't talk business the whole time. For once, They let the silence fill in naturally. "I used to think glass towers were arrogant," Celine said, adjusting her helmet. "They are," Dorian replied. "But now they're necessary. Cities don't need walls anymore. They need transparency." "Is that a metaphor?" "Maybe," he said. "But mostly logistics. Walls trap noise. Glass disperses it." They paused at the east quadrant, where a future sky bridge would hang. She rested her hand on the steel framing. "I like it up here," she said. "It suits you." She glanced over her shoulder. "How?" "You're above the noise, but still in control of the structure." He didn't smile when he said it. He didn't need to. That afternoon, as they left the site, Dorian handed her a folder. "What's this?" "Something that's not on paper yet, but will be soon." She opened it. A schematic. A concept plan. Not for Midtown. For Uptown. Another project. Another skyline. And on the bottom, in pen, SC. "You want me on this too?" "I want you leading it. No co-title. You've earned more than a shadow." She studied him for a beat. "You trust fast." "No," he said. "I trust precisely." She didn't respond. She didn't need to. The next morning, the city's most read real estate blog ran a feature, "The Quiet Woman Reshaping Manhattan, Meet Celine Caro." They used a profile shot of her entering Crest Tower. No dramatic pose, no smile. Just her, walking with purpose. The article didn't sensationalize her divorce. It didn't focus on Corbyn. It detailed the numbers, the savings, the innovations, the leadership. It ended with a quote, "She doesn't shout. She edits the room with a red pen." By noon, 3 more publications requested interviews. Celine declined them all. She had a project meeting in 30 minutes. Corbyn, however, saw it. He called her twice. No answer. He texted, "So this is who you are now? Some development power couple?" She deleted it. Then came the final line. "You're embarrassing yourself, Celine." She paused. "Read it again." Then she forwarded it to her lawyer. Subject line, "Further justification for full separation. Please archive." There was no emotion in her action, no desire to reply. She had a skyline to help finish. That evening, she returned to her brownstone. Dorian was already waiting. Not inside. Outside, he leaned against his car. No coat, just calm. "I hope this isn't intrusive," he said when she approached. "I'm not fragile," she replied. "You don't need disclaimers." He nodded. "I have something for you." She raised an eyebrow. "Not a gift." "A question." She crossed her arms. "I'm listening." He stepped closer, not crowding, just enough to make his voice low. "If we weren't working together, would you have dinner with me?" She studied him. Careful, calm, waiting, no labels. She asked. "No expectations," he replied. "Just interest." She thought for a long moment, then said, "Yes," but she didn't invite him in. She stepped past him, opened her door, turned back, and said, "Pick the place, just not loud." He smiled, barely. "I know the perfect one." Then he left. Celine stood in the entryway, door still open, wind brushing her face. She wasn't flattered. She was considered, and that, to her, meant more than roses. Celine arrived at the restaurant 5 minutes early. It was in Tribeca, tucked between an art gallery and a historic bank. Almost invisible, unless you were looking for it. No velvet rope, no valet. Just a brushed steel door and a discreet host who greeted her by name and walked her down. A narrow hallway into a space that felt more like an architect's sketch than a dining room. Minimalist, warm. Every light focused downward so the room glowed gently without flash. Dorian was already seated. He stood when he saw her. No fanfare, no performance, just respect. She wore a dark navy wrap dress and low heels. Hair down, clean and sleek. No jewelry, no statement pieces. She wasn't there to impress. She was there to observe. He didn't compliment her appearance. He pulled out the chair and said, "Thank you for coming." The menu had no prices. The sommelier said very little. The service was silent, efficient, invisible. It was perfect. They didn't speak about Midtown. Not once. Not zoning. Not contracts. Not timelines. Dorian ordered something with charred leeks and sea bass. Celine chose the duck. 2 glasses of red wine. 1 shared dessert. Instead, they talked about everything else. She told him about growing up in a 2-bedroom apartment in Flushing, where her father taught her that silence was stronger than shouting. About her first job at a city planning office, where no one learned her name until she fixed a mistake they hadn't noticed in 6 months. Dorian shared less, but what he did say mattered. He talked about his brother, how he used to handle the public side of Crest Group until a car accident changed everything. That was when Dorian stopped attending events, started building quietly. No parties, no interviews, just steel, glass, and silence. "You still don't like the spotlight?" she asked. "I've never trusted people who seek it." "I don't either." He smiled. Not wide, not charming, just honest. They left the restaurant just before 10. The street was quiet, a soft breeze moving leaves along the sidewalk. Neither of them rushed. He walked her to the corner, hands in his coat pockets. No touching, no expectation. "I enjoyed this," he said. "I noticed." He didn't ask for another night. He didn't make a promise. He just nodded once and stepped back. Celine watched him disappear into a black car. No driver opened the door. No swarm of paparazzi. Just a man going home. She turned toward her brownstone and exhaled. This wasn't a romance. This was something sturdier. The next morning, Celine was on site by 7 a.m. Hard hat. Flats. Clipboard. The usual. The foreman handed her the updated reports. Delays on materials from Queens. 1 subcontractor needed replacing. A safety inspection had flagged a minor violation in one of the freight elevators. She addressed each problem directly. No delay. No finger-pointing. She made calls, issued directives, and revised the day's flow within an hour. While she worked, her phone buzzed. Not from Corbin. Not from Dorian. From a reporter. "Miss Caro, this is Dana Mellis with Morning Line. I'd love a quick comment on your role in the Crest developments. You've been called the new blueprint of power in last week's article. Any thoughts?" Celine didn't respond. She copied the number, blocked it, then kept working. By noon, Dorian texted, saw the new nickname. They finally caught up. She replied, "They're late to everything." By 3 p.m., Corbin was back. Not physically, digitally. His latest message was longer. Confessional. "I keep trying to understand how we got here. I made mistakes. I know I did. But I didn't think you'd walk away without talking to me. I didn't think you'd move on this fast. Are you seeing him? Just tell me the truth." Celine didn't respond. She didn't delete it either. She let the silence say everything. That evening, she met with the Midtown logistics manager in her office at Crest Tower. The numbers weren't where they needed to be. The team was dragging. She didn't scold. She reshuffled the roles, brought in a newer firm for oversight, removed one name from the chain entirely, quietly, without spectacle. When the manager asked why, she said, "Because we don't wait for collapses. We reinforce before things break." Later that night, she received a delivery. No name, no note. Just a bottle of the same red wine they'd had at the restaurant. She didn't open it. She placed it on her shelf, beside the sealed Midtown contract and her original sketch of the supply chain revision. Not a trophy, a timeline, each step forward marked by intention. Celine wasn't trying to heal. She was trying to build. And she wasn't building alone. The Midtown site was shifting, not just physically, though the scaffolding rose higher by the week, but in energy, in presence. Teams no longer waited for approvals, they anticipated them. Schedules were met early. Delays became rare. And when questions arose, eyes turned to one name, Celine. She never raised her voice, never rushed. She simply walked in, reviewed, corrected, and left with clarity. By midweek, the city's planning review board sent word expedited approvals for Towers C and E were granted, on one condition. Celine had to present in person. Not Dorian, not his legal team. Her. It wasn't protocol, but it was respect. Dorian called her the morning the request came through. "You're in demand," he said. "They want to hear how you restructured the vendor vertical. They want proof it wasn't luck." "No," he replied. "They want to see how power can move without noise." She said nothing at first. "Then, I'll prepare the deck." He laughed softly. "I already know you did last night." Celine smiled. "I didn't do it for them." "I know." The presentation was scheduled for Friday. She wore a fitted dark grey suit, no colour, no gloss. Her hair was tied back, no slides overloaded with detail, just one structure at a time, her voice even, calm and sharp. One board member tried interrupting her midway through phase 2. She held up a single finger. Not to shush, to pause. "Let me finish the root impact first," she said, then continued, without missing a beat. By the end, the room was quiet. No questions, no comments, just head nods and quiet scribbles. Outside, as she stepped into the elevator, her phone buzzed. "Dorian, you don't need applause. But you just earned a standing one." She replied with 3 words, "Send next challenge." That evening, Celine stood in her kitchen, barefoot, tea brewing on the stove. The doorbell rang. She checked the monitor. Corbin. Again. She didn't open it. He buzzed once, then twice, then kept his hand pressed against it, like pressure could change her mind. Finally he stepped back, stared at the door camera, and said, "This is who you are now. Some power player with a glass tower and a new man." She watched him without emotion. "Do you think any of them care about you? You're a piece in their machine, Celine. The moment you're not useful, they'll toss you. But me? I was there from the start." She turned off the screen. Let him talk to no one. He buzzed once more, then left. She didn't call security. She didn't chase him down. She simply finished her tea, picked up the architectural renderings for Uptown, and resumed work. Saturday morning, she met Dorian for a rooftop inspection. Just the 2 of them. No clipboard this time. No hard hat. Just wind, sun, and the clean frame of a future skyline rising behind them. "I saw him," Dorian said. Celine turned. "Corbin." He was parked across from the site last night, smoking, watching. Did he cause a scene? No. But he looked like he was building one in his head. She nodded. "That's all he's ever built." They stood in silence for a moment. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm not reacting. That's more than I expected from myself. Reaction is his game." "I don't play games," she said. He stepped closer, still not touching. Just standing beside her, his voice low. "That's why you win." They stood like that until the wind turned. She looked at him. "We're not the same." "I know. You've always had access. I had to make mine. I've always known that too." She turned back to the skyline. "Then don't ever assume we're equals. Respect doesn't mean pretending we came from the same blueprint." He paused, then said, "I don't want to be your equal." She glanced sideways. "I want to be your partner." Celine blinked once. She didn't respond, but she didn't walk away, and Dorian didn't press her. Sunday morning came with a knock at the door. Not Corbin, not Dorian. A courier, an envelope, hand-delivered. Inside, a cease and desist threat from one of Corbin's former partners, claiming Celine had unfair access to privileged designs during her marriage. She stared at the wording. The accusation wasn't about her work, it was about discrediting her rise. She called her lawyer. "I'll send you my personal planning files from back then. They were always on my private drive. You sure you want to go this route?" "Yes," she said. "Let's clear every shadow. Corbin's behind this," he said. "I know. We can send a counter notice. Press coverage could go your way. I don't want noise. I want closure." He paused. Understood. That night, she didn't work. She sat on the terrace with a blanket, sipping wine, her phone set to Do Not Disturb. Across the city, steel cranes held pieces of her future in place. Not built by rage, not driven by revenge, just rebuilt, intentionally. And when the city woke on Monday, it would be standing taller, because of her. Celine arrived at the Crest Group headquarters wearing black slacks, a white cashmere turtleneck, and no makeup. Her hair was pinned back tightly, clean and severe. Her assistant handed her the file from legal, final copies of her response to the cease and desist. She reviewed every page herself. She wasn't paranoid. She was prepared. Corbyn's former associate had tried to spin an old presentation she'd once drafted during their marriage into proprietary information. He wanted to imply she stole a model that had already been hers. She didn't panic. She annotated. After 30 minutes, she looked up and said to her assistant, "Send it back with this note. That model was mine before your meeting agenda even had a date." Then she walked into her midtown coordination call, like nothing happened. Her team was waiting, architects, zoning liaisons, finance reps. Everyone logged in early now. No one wanted to be late when Celine spoke. She opened the meeting by saying, "We're not here to survive another week. We're here to prevent January delays. If you're waiting for permission to be excellent, this isn't the team for you." No one moved. Then she shared the updated site sequencing, cutting 4 days of wasted downtime per tower. By the end of the meeting, her inbox was filling with approvals. Outside, snow flurried past the high-rise windows. Celine didn't pause to look. She was already on to the next agenda. After lunch, she met Dorian in the executive lounge. He poured coffee into 2 minimalist black mugs. No cream, no sugar. "You're everywhere this week," he said, sliding one mug toward her. "I'm where the work is. Legal said you tore apart that C&D like it was a practice exam." "I did." He smiled. "You good?" She nodded. "Do you want me to step in?" She met his eyes. "No. That's how women disappear in rooms they built. Quietly, kindly, behind men who say they're helping." He didn't argue. Instead, he said, "Then I'll be across the room if you need steel." That earned him a blink, not quite a smile, but close. She stood, finished her coffee and said, "Send me the Uptown site report. I'm ready." That evening she walked into her brownstone and found a letter on her doorstep. Again, no courier this time, no legal header, just her name. In handwriting she recognized. Corbyn. She opened it only because she needed to confirm one thing, whether he was done trying or desperate enough to escalate. It read, "You win. I get it. You're cold, you're strong, whatever, but you've made your point. You want to erase me, fine, but remember, I helped build you. You think these people respect you? Wait until they don't need you anymore. Let's see how long Dorian keeps pretending you're more than useful." No signature, just wait. Celine folded the letter, placed it on the granite counter beside the window, then picked up her phone and dialed. Not Dorian, her lawyer. "I want everything documented." "It's already being tracked," he said. "But we can file a preemptive restraining notice if this continues. I don't want drama. I want distance. You'll get it." When she hung up, she made herself a cup of tea and reviewed the Uptown site challenges. Only after she finalized her notes did she pour the tea. Still hot, still hers. She didn't rage, didn't vent. She adjusted. The next day, Crest Group's PR department reached out. "We're getting multiple inquiries about your role in the Hudson and Uptown builds," the head of communications said. "Would you consider doing a single sit-down interview to control the narrative?" Celine didn't answer right away. She asked, "Why now?" "Because every week your name trends, and every time you say nothing, people get louder about what they think they know." She considered that. Then she said, "Only if I control the edits. You'll have full sign-off. I want no questions about my personal life, no marriage references. And if anyone says the word cold, I walk." The woman on the call paused. "Understood. I'll send availability." Celine ended the call and turned back to her site sequence documents. If people were going to speak her name, they were going to pronounce it correctly, and only in the context of what she actually built. Later that night, her doorbell rang. She checked the monitor. Dorian. She opened the door without speaking. He held up a box. Dinner. You haven't eaten today. She stepped aside. He walked in like he'd done it before. She set plates. He unpacked food. They didn't rush. Halfway through the meal, he said, "You're carrying a lot of silence." "I always have. It doesn't have to get heavy." She looked at him. "Are you saying that as a partner or as a man? I don't separate the two with you." That made her pause. He reached into his coat pocket and placed a black folder on the table. Preliminary Uptown Financials. "Your name's already on the project header." She opened it. Read the front page, then said, "I'll handle the first vendor slate." Quietly, "I knew you would." They sat for another hour without any talk of emotions or futures or labels. But when he left, he touched her wrist. Not for possession, for contact, and she let him. Celine locked the door behind him, then turned off every light except the one above her drafting table. She rolled out the updated plans and began sketching the next phase, not of the project, of herself. The next morning, Celine moved differently, not with urgency, with clarity. She arrived at the Uptown preliminary site walkthrough 10 minutes early. The general contractor greeted her with stiff formality, not expecting the woman whose name now hovered beside Dorian's on every internal document. He said, "We thought Mr. Kress would be joining." Celine replied, "This isn't a formality, it's a foundation check. I don't need Dorian for that." That was the last time anyone asked about him. They walked the site. She wore black boots and a tan trench, clipboard in hand. Not for optics, for accuracy. She measured noise overflow, checked crane rotation clearances, and adjusted loading estimates by eye before even pulling out a tape. 2 junior architects trailed her, whispering. One said, "She doesn't stop to guess. She already knows." By the time they completed the walkthrough, she had already revised the primary materials staging plan and flagged a contractor's math error that would have delayed Tower B's approval by a week. Back at the temporary office trailer, she sat with the structural engineer and went line by line through the updated costs. He tried to breeze past a 4% increase in anchor steel. Celine paused. "Walk me through this number." He hesitated. "Market prices adjusted." "When?" "Last Thursday." Celine raised an eyebrow. "Prices dropped last Thursday." He shifted. "I mean the week before that." She slid her phone across the table. Opened the supply index report. "Last 3 weeks have shown consistent price declines." "You padded this." He flushed. "It's a rounding error." "No," she said. "It's an assumption. And I don't tolerate assumptions when millions are in motion." The room went still. Then she stood. "You'll send a corrected estimate before end of day. If not, I'll bring in a second review. This is your opportunity to stay on the project." The man nodded. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She moved on. That night, Celine returned home, peeled off her coat, and sank into her chair by the window. Her phone buzzed. Not Dorian. A name she hadn't seen in years. Ray Nolan. The message was short. "I saw Corbin last night. He's unraveling. You should know, he's talking to people, painting you as the one who left him for another man." Celine stared at the screen, then typed, "He can talk." "I build." Ray replied, "You're winning, but he's still dangerous when ignored." Celine didn't answer. She didn't need Ray's concern. She needed documentation. She screenshotted the thread and forwarded it to her lawyer. Subject line, pattern. Then she poured herself a drink and turned to her open briefcase. Inside, the final set of financials for Uptown's investor meeting next week. She flipped through the pages, marking changes in red. She'd stay up another hour, not because she was behind, because staying ahead had become her peace. The weekend came quietly. No parties, no social posts. Celine walked through the Met with a friend from her university days, a zoning attorney now living in DC. They talked about early career missteps, about the silence women had to learn in order to survive male LE meetings, about who they used to be and what they would never shrink back into. "You don't look tired," her friend said. "I'm not. You look sharp." Celine tilted her head. "I cut what doesn't fit." By Sunday evening, Dorian sent a text. "Investor deck looks clean. Want to walk it before Monday?" She replied, "Come by at 9, keep it short. I have revisions to submit." At 9:02, he knocked. He came without a laptop, just a folder and 2 sparkling waters. She opened the deck. He sat across from her. They spoke for 40 minutes, no pauses, no interruptions. They disagreed on 2 pages. He conceded on 1. She agreed to rephrase the other. At the end, he said, "Your language lands like architecture." She looked up. "How?" "It holds weight where it needs to, and it doesn't try to impress. It just functions." Celine closed the folder. "You didn't come here to flirt. No. You came here because you know I'm the reason this project will survive if things get messy." He didn't deny it. Instead, he said, "You make the foundation hold." She stared at him, and for the first time in weeks, her voice softened. "You can stay for tea, but only tea." He nodded. She poured. He didn't reach for her. He didn't make a move. He sat beside her. Let the silence settle. Let the moment exist. And Celine allowed it, because this time, she wasn't being pursued. She was being respected, and that was rarer than any form of love she'd ever been offered. The headlines hit before sunrise. Crest Group quietly moves Celine Caro to the front of Manhattan's uptown development. From consultant to powerhouse, the woman behind New York's new skyline. A new era of quiet influence. Why everyone's talking about Celine Caro. By the time Celine walked into the executive wing at Crest Group, the front desk assistant just nodded and said, "You're trending again." Celine didn't pause. She handed off her coffee order, took the elevator, and entered the Monday leadership meeting 5 minutes early. As usual, the others filed in slower, louder, more performative. She let them. Dorian entered last. He gave no speech, just sat beside her and opened his notes. One of the board members tried to break the quiet tension with a joke. "You've gone viral again, Celine. That mean you're buying lunch?" Without looking up from her briefing, she replied, "I buy results. I don't reward noise." The room hushed. Dorian didn't grin, but his pen stopped moving for a second, just enough to acknowledge it. The meeting began. They reviewed timeline accelerations on Towers A and D site coordination updates, budget realignments, but the room only leaned forward when Celine spoke. When she laid out her revised material import plan, Dorian asked one question: "Are we prepared for customs backlash?" Celine answered, "It's already cleared. I had my zoning contact loop in the deputy commissioner last Thursday." He blinked once. "You didn't mention that." "I didn't need applause. I needed the clearance." He nodded slowly. The conversation moved on. After the meeting, one of the senior project investors pulled Dorian aside. "She's cold," he whispered. "No," Dorian replied. "She's exact." Later that afternoon, Celine stepped into her private office overlooking the river. A fresh stack of binders waited on her desk. Updated procurement data, subcontractor files, new site renderings. Her assistant followed. 3 more press requests today, all national. "No comment, no appearance," Celine said, flipping open the first binder. "There's one more thing. It's about Corbyn." Celine's eyes paused on a paragraph, but she didn't look up. "Go on." "His firm filed for contract protection. They're claiming commercial interference." Celine raised her gaze slowly. "They're building a public story." "Yes. Have legal review our firewall. Make sure every document from my previous firm has timestamp logs and witness records." They already did. "You're clean." Celine nodded. "Then let him talk. I'll keep building." After the assistant left, she leaned back. She wasn't angry. She was still. It wasn't shock to see Corbyn spiral. It was confirmation. The louder he became, the closer he moved to collapse. She didn't need to respond. She needed to continue. By midweek, she was reviewing the final bid specs for the Uptown Civic Plaza. One contractor, Robertson Slate, had submitted a lowball offer with glossy renderings and vague material timelines. Dorian walked into her office mid-review. She passed him the file. They're overselling. The math's wrong. He skimmed the pages. Everyone's dazzled by their name. Celine shook her head. Branding doesn't pour concrete. He chuckled. You going to tell them that in front of everyone? No. I'm going to say it once in a spreadsheet and then approve someone better. Dorian leaned on the edge of her desk. You know what people keep asking me? I don't care. He ignored that. They keep asking if we're a thing. Celine kept writing in the margins. That's their problem. I've told them we're co-leads. Good. But you know they're watching. I let them. He watched her for a long moment. You don't hide power, he said. You just keep it clean. Celine didn't look up. You still interested in dinner? Always. She handed him the file. Then come back tomorrow, with a better bid spec. He left, smiling. She didn't, but she marked a page where his pen had paused, and rewrote it sharper. That night, she received a message from someone she hadn't spoken to in years, Corbin's sister. Celine, I know this is probably unwelcome, but Corbin is unraveling. He's blaming you for everything. Ray's left him. He's drinking again. I'm worried he'll drag your name through the mud just to distract himself. Please stay ahead of this. Celine replied. I already am. Then she blocked the number, not out of cruelty, out of clarity, because nothing in that message surprised her. It didn't shake her. What shook people was silence. What scared them was stillness. And Celine Caro was quiet enough to scare anyone who had underestimated her. Celine stood on the unfinished balcony of Tower C, wind threading through her coat, plans rolled under one arm. From this height, the city looked clean, distant, structured, the way she liked her decisions. Dorian stood beside her, reviewing measurements on a tablet. No small talk, no agenda. They were back in work mode, and neither of them needed to pretend. Final vendor updates came through, he said. Your call on the bid? New Haven Steel. Not the cheapest, but the most consistent. No bribes, no missing paperwork. I've used them before. They'll deliver. He nodded, barely looking up. Done. Celine scanned the plaza below. Scaffolding climbed across the eastern side. Workers like dots, movement without chaos. No shouting, no blaring music. Just systems in motion. Her phone buzzed. She checked it with one glance and slipped it away. Dorian asked, more press? No. More noise. He didn't push. They reviewed timelines, confirmed material windows, walked the stairwell to the future glass walkway. When they reached the central hall of the upcoming civic space, Dorian turned toward her. This space will hold 5,000 people, he said. Events, speeches, press tours. Celine nodded. It'll look louder than it is. Ironic, he added, given who designed it. She looked at him. Power isn't about volume, it's about weight. He smiled, slight. That should be on the wall. No, let it live in the concrete. They returned to the trailer to finalize the walkthrough notes. Celine barely sat before her assistant appeared at the door. There's a situation. She didn't flinch. Go on. Someone sent a packet to the investors, alleging you used confidential data from Corbin's firm to gain competitive ground in the Hudson phase. Dorian stiffened. Is it from him? Not directly, but it's his old letterhead, redacted signatures, misdated files. Celine stood. Get legal on the line. They're already drafting a formal statement. She took the packet and read through it. The documents were sloppy, clumsily forged. One file showed an edit history that literally listed Corbin's email address. I want this buried, Dorian said. No, Celine replied. I want it aired. He raised an eyebrow. I want our PR team to publish the full packet, show how desperate and poorly executed it is, redact nothing, highlight everything that proves fabrication. That's not your style. It is now. He nodded once. She stepped back into her office and called her lawyer directly. I want this documented in public record. Full breakdown. Let people see exactly how desperate he's become. The lawyer hesitated. Are you sure? Yes, she said. I don't win by hiding. I win by being undeniable. By the next morning, headlines read, Crest team refutes fabricated allegations against Celine Caro. Full report released. Sloppy smear attempt backfires. Caro's team releases evidence of forgery, including original edit logs. Celine Caro doesn't flinch. She fires back with facts. Celine arrived at Crest Tower that morning to silence. Not cautious silence, respectful silence. The kind that made people step aside in elevators. She walked straight to the top floor. Dorian met her at the door. Still want to lead the Uptown investor dinner tonight? Especially now, she said. That evening, she wore a simple black dress. No jewelry. Hair pinned tightly back. When the investors asked about the drama, she said, Anyone who doubts what I built will eventually walk through what I've built. No one asked again. If you believe real power doesn't need volume, and that silence can be the sharpest reply, this channel is for you. Comment she didn't fight back. She built forward. Like, share, and subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories for more elite revenge. Quiet justice and stories where the strongest voices don't need to shout. The charity gala was held at the Aurelian, a historic ballroom in Midtown, built with vaulted ceilings, limestone pillars, and too many chandeliers. It was the kind of place where reputations walked 2 steps ahead of the person wearing them. Tonight's cause was affordable housing in the Bronx. But everyone knew that wasn't why people showed up. It was a visibility event. And Celine Caro walked in like a quiet headline. She wore black, sleek, structured, unembellished. Her neckline was clean, her sleeves sharp, her heels matte and steady. No sequins, no jewelry, nothing that shimmered. She didn't need light. She was the moment. Dorian arrived minutes after her, also black, tailored, understated. He didn't approach her right away. They moved through separate conversations. Industry heads, developers, donors, council members, but everyone noticed how their eyes found each other from across the room. She sipped a single glass of wine and offered short, precise responses to flattery. She didn't entertain small talk. She wasn't rude. She was focused. And then she saw him, Corbin Linwood. Tan suit, no tie. The kind of casual, polished look meant to distract from desperation. He wasn't on the guest list, but someone had pulled strings, and there, clinging to his arm like a designer accessory, was Ray Nolan. Celine didn't stop walking. She didn't change expression, but the room did. People turned, glancing between the 2 women, like a match was about to strike. Ray smirked. Corbin looked smug, as if his presence alone might provoke something. Celine moved toward the center of the room and paused beside the mayor's deputy, engaging in conversation just as the string quartet shifted into a quieter set. Her tone was clear, neutral, calm, until Corbin made his move. "Celine," he called, loud enough to carry. She turned her head. Not fully, just enough to acknowledge. She didn't walk toward him. He crossed the distance. The deputy politely excused himself. "Can we talk?" Corbin said, voice lowered. "You're not on the program," Celine replied. "I just want a minute. Please." Dorian arrived before Corbin could take another step. Not forceful, just present. "She's not available," Dorian said evenly. Corbin frowned. "This doesn't concern you. It does when your presence affects her peace." Celine didn't step back, didn't speak. Corbin shifted. "Celine, we were married for 6 years. 3 of them were honest," she said, still not raising her voice. His face tensed. "You didn't have to do it like this. You didn't have to humiliate me," Celine replied. "I didn't." Corbin looked around, aware now of the eyes on him. "You're walking around like some queen. But don't forget, I helped build. You helped stall," she cut in. Ray grabbed Corbin's arm. "Let's go." But he didn't move. Celine finally turned to face him. You lost access, Corbin. You don't get to write new chapters in a book you walked out of. That landed. He blinked, and for the first time, had no words. Dorian stepped slightly forward. Walk away. You're not the story here. Corbin's jaw clenched, but he turned. Ray trailed behind, eyes flicking with something between fear and envy. Celine didn't watch them leave. She turned back toward the deputy. Apologies for the interruption, she said smoothly. He shook his head. No apology needed. That was surgical. Later that evening, the media reported the event as expected, but one image stood out online. Celine standing between two titans of development, Dorian to her right, Corbin in the blurred background. The caption read, "The woman who rewrote the room." It went viral by midnight, and by morning, Celine's inbox had 6 interview requests, 2 TEDx invitations, and an offer from a private university to guest lecture on modern infrastructure. She didn't respond to any of them, because she had a site inspection in 90 minutes. And a reputation didn't build towers. Work did. 2 days after the gala, Celine walked into the Midtown site conference room and found the entire vendor team already seated. They stood when she entered. No one told them to. She set her bag down, clicked her pen, and said, "Let's begin." Everyone did. There were no side conversations, no excuses. Every minute had weight. This wasn't because Celine demanded fear. She demanded efficiency, and people respected what they feared losing, especially access to her clarity. They reviewed elevator placements, energy load forecasts, and late-stage lighting delays. Celine cut 3 points of drag from the electrical team's supply timeline just by reorganizing their sequence order. By the end, even the silent subcontractors were scribbling notes. When the meeting adjourned, one of the junior PMs lingered. "You're different in person than I expected," he said, nervous but sincere. Celine paused, eyes steady. "What did you expect?" I thought you'd be mean. And you're just efficient." She closed her folder. "That's the problem. We call women efficient and men brilliant. Don't do that again." He nodded quickly. "Understood." She left him there, flushed, educated. Later that day, Dorian met her on site for a walkthrough. The tension from the gala had followed them. Headlines, photo reposts. Quiet commentary from people who thought they were being subtle. But Dorian wasn't rattled. Celine never had been. "I heard Corbin tried contacting 2 of our new investors," he said as they crossed the scaffolding near Tower B. "He did want me to handle it?" "No. My lawyer already flagged it. We have documentation, and the firm issued a formal warning. One more move and I'll file." Dorian nodded. "I don't like that he's still orbiting you." "He's not orbiting me," Celine said, pausing mid-step. "He's circling a version of me that no longer exists." Dorian exhaled. "You're right," he said. They reached the edge of the build line. The city sprawled beneath them, like a map she now helped draw. "You were composed at the gala," he added. "But I saw the way you stared Ray down." Celine's voice stayed even. She thought she was in control. What she didn't understand was she was an accessory. He would have dropped her eventually. "Did it satisfy you, seeing them like that?" "No," Celine said. "Because I don't get satisfaction from their collapse. I get satisfaction from not being in the wreckage with them." Dorian studied her. "That," he said, "is why I respect you." She turned to him, unblinking. "Respect is the only offer I'll accept from you. Don't ever try to hand me something less." He nodded. "Never." They returned to the elevator in silence. That night, Celine stood in front of her mirror, watching herself undress. No audience, no performance. She folded her clothes, turned off the light, and walked barefoot through the dark into her kitchen. The city blinked outside her windows, but inside, everything was still. She poured herself a drink, not to unwind, to mark the moment. The public had finally stopped asking who she used to be. Now, they asked how she built what she had. And that shift, that was the real victory. Not revenge, redirection. The first press article titled "Her Co-Architect of the Future." Celine didn't comment. She didn't need to. By the time the Midtown Plaza reached Phase 3, her design decisions were being studied in university case studies. Not because of a scandal, not because of a man, but because they worked. She showed up every morning before 8. No camera crews, no dramatic makeup, just rolled-up sleeves and results. That Monday, Dorian asked to meet privately, not in his office. On the rooftop of the Westview Tower, the first high-rise she'd quietly helped redirect during a zoning dispute nearly 7 years ago. She didn't ask why there. She just arrived. He stood near the edge of the building with 2 coffees in hand. No folder, no tablet, just him, the skyline, and that measured stillness she'd come to expect from him. "Congratulations," he said as she approached. "For what? You just signed off on the Uptown Phase 2. You're the only name on the contract. I thought that was your idea." It was. But watching you earn it was better than I imagined. She took the coffee. "Why here?" she asked. He turned toward the skyline. "This is the building where I first noticed your name buried in a zoning memo. You'd made a correction no one caught. Saved the city 6 months of delays. You remember that?" "I remember everything that matters." Celine didn't respond right away. She looked out over the city, watching cranes move like chess pieces in the distance. Some of them were hers. Some were still his. "You know," she said slowly, "I used to think respect was something you waited to be given. Something men eventually handed out once you'd proven yourself quiet enough, useful enough." Dorian turned to her. "And now? Now I know it's something you enforce, through clarity. Do you think I respect you because you're useful?" "No," she said. "That's why I trust you." They stood there, the hum of the city moving around them. Then Dorian said, "What if we weren't building just cities together?" She looked at him. "You're asking a personal question inside a professional success." "I'm asking if there's room," he said plainly. "Not for a label, not for a performance, just space, for something honest." Celine didn't answer right away. Instead, she asked, "What would change if I said yes?" "Nothing that matters. And if I said no, still nothing that matters." She nodded once. "That's why I'm considering it." He didn't reach for her hand, didn't move closer. He simply stood beside her, solid, quiet, ready if she wanted him to be. And that night, when she returned to her brownstone, she didn't feel chased or cornered. She felt considered. There was no pressure to define what they had, but there was clarity in knowing it wasn't temporary. Wednesday morning, Celine entered the Crest Tower executive suite with a case file under her arm and 5 emails already answered before sunrise. Her team had submitted the first draft of the Uptown Transportation Reroute proposal overnight. Celine scanned the key sections, annotated 15 data points, and flagged a structural misalignment between site entry and municipal flow. She fixed it in 12 minutes. At 9:30, the meeting with the city's Transit Oversight Committee began. Celine led the presentation. There were 6 men in the room, all seasoned, all defensive. "We've reviewed your design," one said. "It's efficient, but aggressive." Celine nodded. "It's effective. There's concern about pedestrian overflow. I modeled traffic from 6 variables," she said. "Your last system used 3. My plan reduces congestion by 16%. That's not aggression, that's accuracy." Silence. One of the older committee heads leaned forward. "Miss Caro, some of us are used to projects that build slowly, layer by layer." She cut in, voice calm. "I don't layer delays, I layer solutions. If slow comforts you, fine. But cities aren't comfortable anymore. They're in motion. My designs reflect that. They ask no more questions." By noon, the city signed off. Celine walked out with approval letters under her arm. She didn't tell anyone. She didn't post. She just moved on to the next fire. That evening, she walked through the Uptown site alone. Hard hat, work boots, no entourage. One of the foremen spotted her and straightened up. "Ms. Caro, thought you'd send a coordinator." I don't send people when I need clarity. He gestured toward the south corridor. Concrete deliveries backed up. Weather, scheduling. We're a full day behind. Shift the second drop-off to 4 a.m. tomorrow. Reroute the crews to finish steel prep. By the time the trucks arrive, they'll be ready to pour. No downtime. He stared at her. You want to start at 4 a.m.? I want to finish on time. Got it. She walked the sight line, inspecting foundation progress, reviewing blueprints in hand. At the far end, a new worker looked up. Who's she? The foreman answered, She's the reason we're ahead of schedule. At 8:30 that night, Celine returned home. No calls, no texts. Just quiet. She changed into a robe, poured herself a cup of hot ginger tea, and stood by the window. Her phone vibrated once. Dorian, you're being offered a Civic Impact Award. City wants to name a community plaza after you. She read it twice, then typed back, decline the name. Use the funding for a scholarship. He replied instantly. That's unexpected, she answered. I didn't build this city to stamp my name on it. I built it so more women can... He didn't reply right away. Then, remind me again why I admire you. She didn't type back. She just smiled into her tea. Friday came with frost and questions. Corbin filed a request to negotiate outside of legal parameters. His attorney reached out to Celine's legal team with the vague suggestion of an off-the-record conversation. Celine's lawyer forwarded the email. She replied, Tell him the city already heard me speak. I have no use for echo. Corbin tried once more. He sent a handwritten note to her office. It read, You're becoming someone I don't even recognize. Celine folded the note once, cleanly, and placed it in a file marked unnecessary proof. That night, she didn't drink wine or stare out windows. She sent an email to a public school in Queens. She offered to fund 10 girls in their new architectural STEM program. No credit, no press, just opportunity. The Monday headlines didn't lead with Dorian Kress. They led with her. Celine Caro reshapes public infrastructure standards. Uptown Phase 2 ahead of schedule. Not his wife, not his shadow. Celine Caro is the builder Manhattan needed. She didn't read them twice. Instead, she pulled on her coat and walked into the Kress Group boardroom, where the Uptown civic planners were already seated. You've seen the permits? She asked. They had. Good. Then we move. She laid out a new plan. One that cut 4 weeks from the final phase by overlapping utility access prep and pedestrian roofing, a move most contractors wouldn't dare without triple approvals. But Celine wasn't most contractors, and Dorian wasn't most CEOs. He nodded. Once. You're clear to lead it. The others glanced between them, unsure whether to admire or fear the power they shared. She didn't care. By noon, Corbin made his next move. A confidential source fed rumors to a tabloid-style digital outlet, stories about Celine's questionable rise, implying she had traded access for affection. The story wasn't well written, but it was meant to stain. Within an hour, Celine's assistant stormed into her office, tablet in hand. You need to see this. Celine skimmed the article, barely blinking. No official quotes, no evidence, no journalist with a name worth suing. Her assistant hesitated. Still, it's making rounds. Celine shut the folder in front of her, then opened something louder. What? My original proposal to fund the city STEM lab, the one the deputy mayor stalled. Release it to the press. But that's not connected. It will be. Truth doesn't need to fight lies. It just needs to move faster. The press caught on within hours. Instead of chasing gossip, they started quoting her policy notes, discussing zoning reform, sharing photos of students at the school she quietly supported last year. The story flipped before it ever found traction. Corbin, meanwhile, faced fallout. His firm, once one of the top 3 boutique developers in downtown Manhattan, was quietly dropped from a midtown high-rise bid after one of the investors flagged integrity concerns. He showed up outside Crest Tower that Thursday. Celine's security notified her. He's outside. Says he wants to apologize. Document it, she said. That's all. She didn't go down. Dorian didn't either. They watched from the conference suite above as Corbin stood alone on the sidewalk, pacing with a paper bag in hand, a sad attempt to look casual. "He used to seem taller," Dorian said quietly. "He used to look at people like they were mirrors," Celine replied. "Now he's looking for a window." Corbin eventually left. Celine went back to reviewing ceiling frame logistics. That weekend, Celine walked into the lobby of a midtown luxury building, where a new mother's shelter was holding its annual benefit dinner. No headlines, no cameras, just donated tables and families in transition. She didn't make a speech. She didn't dress to be noticed, but she handed the director a check large enough to fund expansion into 2 more boroughs. "No funder has ever written this without asking for naming rights," the woman whispered, stunned. Celine smiled faintly. "Good. Then they'll remember who really made space for them." That night, when she got home, she stood in front of her mirror again, not checking her reflection, just standing, because everything in her life finally felt aligned, quiet, stable, undeniably hers. By the following Wednesday, Celine had become the name no one could say, without including words like standard, calculated, or unshakable. Uptown Phase 2 was a week ahead. Midtown's Civic Pavilion was already prepping for press coverage. Contractors followed her blueprint like gospel. And every time she walked into a room, people leaned back to make space, not out of courtesy, but reverence. At 9 a.m., she reviewed revised ventilation schematics from the plaza's event center. At 10:45, she rejected a cost-saving attempt that would have risked structural stress. By noon, she had 3 new site visits scheduled, and a 4th one she requested herself. Because what mattered now wasn't the timeline, it was the legacy. Dorian sent a message that afternoon. Lunch on the terrace, nothing formal. "You earned this." She almost declined, but something told her to say yes. When she arrived at the rooftop garden space of the new Cress-owned Midtown complex, Dorian was already there, sleeves rolled up, 2 plates of roasted sea bass and asparagus waiting on the glass table. No servers, no photographer, just a man who never needed applause for doing the right thing. "You didn't have to cook," she said, setting down her satchel. "I didn't. I reheated." She sat, folded her napkin, and gave him one long look. He didn't ask what was wrong. He just waited. She said, "They're still trying to tie my name to him." "They can't. They're trying. Let them. It'll make your silence louder." She didn't answer right away. Her eyes moved to the skyline. So many of those buildings had stories, and for once, hers wasn't hidden in the structure. It stood in the foundation. Dorian reached across the table, not to hold her hand, but to slide over a sealed envelope. "What's this?" he said. "The Uptown Council wants you to take lead on their advisory board." She opened it. Inside, an invitation. Not ceremonial. Official. Paid. With voting power. Community-wide influence. Real impact. "You want me to do this?" "I didn't submit your name. Someone else did. Someone you mentored last year." Celine blinked. "Danielle?" She said you changed the way she looked at leadership, that she'd never seen a woman choose silence like a sword. Celine closed the envelope. And this time, when she looked back at Dorian, her voice was quieter than usual. Not softer. More certain. "I'm not used to people wanting me around without needing something from me." "I'm not people," he replied. She smiled. Slightly. "No, you're not." They finished lunch without any more business talk. When she stood to leave, he walked her to the elevator. Just before she stepped inside, he said, "You know, most people build to be seen. You're building to disappear from the noise." She nodded. "That's the goal." The doors slid shut. But her impact wasn't closed. It was cemented. That weekend, Ray Nolan sent her an anonymous message. Not threatening, not bitter, just a line. "He talks about you like you still owe him something." Celine didn't reply. She didn't forward it. She didn't file it. She deleted it. Then got up, pulled out her leather notebook, and opened a blank page. At the top, she wrote, "Phase 3, after noise, and beneath it, real partnerships, ethical legacy firms, civic accountability pipeline, private funding for future builders, no press, no applause. Just architecture, just clarity, just forward. She closed the notebook, placed it beside her tea, and stared out at the skyline again. This time, there was nothing to chase, no one to fight. Just the knowledge that when the world tried to erase her with gossip, she answered with steel and vision. And they couldn't hold a rumor against a city she helped stand upright. The Uptown Civic Plaza opened with no ribbon cutting, no stage, no press drone flying overhead, just a clean steel gate sliding open to the public, early, under budget, fully operational. Celine stood on the upper balcony, watching. Children ran across the newly paved walkways. Vendors set up carts. Artists chalked murals into the foundation that would fade and return with every season. She didn't speak. She just observed. The city didn't know she was watching, and that was the point. This wasn't about applause. It was about infrastructure, clean transitions, safe lighting, wide ramps, thoughtful drainage, things no one noticed unless they were wrong. Celine had built it all right. Dorian appeared at her side a few minutes later. He held 2 coffee cups, gave her the one she liked without asking. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm still. That's new. It's unfamiliar." They stood for a moment. Below, people moved across the space she had drawn on napkins, revised, in silence, and defended in meetings where no one had planned to listen. "You could disappear now," he said. She looked at him. "You mean, walk away?" "No," Dorian said. "I mean exist without needing to justify it." She nodded slowly. "Maybe the first will." He leaned on the rail. "What would that look like?" "No speeches, no panels. Maybe an office 3 floors down instead of 30. Teaching, building small. But not retreating, just choosing." "I'd follow," he said simply. She didn't reply, but she didn't need to, because just then, a woman walked up with her 2 children, an architect Celine had mentored 3 years ago. She didn't notice Celine watching from above. She just pointed to a sign with the children's names etched under the Future Builders sponsorship wall. They smiled, touching the plaque. Celine turned to Dorian. "That's what it looks like." He smiled. "Then let's fund 5 more walls like it." By mid-afternoon, the mayor's office called. They wanted to name a corridor after her. Celine declined, again. Instead, she suggested a small reading room on the 2nd floor, stocked with engineering and urban development materials for underserved students. "Call it whatever you want," she said, "but put the blueprints on the walls, not my name." That night, she stood at her drafting table, not to build, to archive. She labeled 4 binders. Midtown Core Uptown Civic Crest, Consolidated Phase 3 Concepts. Each page was annotated, initialed, and preserved. No one would have to guess how the city shifted. It would be there, line by line. She poured herself a glass of water, checked the time, and sent one final message. To Dorian's subject, Team Restructure Proposal. Let's build the next one, under both our names. Quietly, cleanly. Only if it feels earned, he replied 2 minutes later. It already does. Outside her window, the city glowed in soft grids. She didn't own it, but she'd shaped it. Without screaming, without revenge, without needing to be saved. She'd been mistaken for fragile, then for dangerous, now for foundational. That was enough. The last week of the month, Celine received a private courier envelope. No return label, just her name in embossed print. She opened it with a practiced calm. Inside, an invitation, not to a gala, not to a panel, but to a private developer's arbitration meeting between Crest Group and Linwood Properties. She didn't flinch. This wasn't chance. This was Corbyn's last move. A final effort to claw back space and relevance in a world he no longer shaped. Dorian didn't comment when she showed him the envelope. He simply said, "I'll step out of the meeting if you want." But she shook her head. No, I'll go. The arbitration took place in a private conference room at a midtown legal suite. Long mahogany table, bottled water, neutral art on the walls. Celine arrived first. No lawyer, no assistant, just her portfolio binder and her own silence. Dorian arrived next. He gave her a nod but didn't hover. He sat 2 seats down, left space, and waited. Corbin came last. Hair slicked, cufflinks polished, that tight, manufactured smile, and Ray nowhere in sight. The arbitrator entered. Today's matter concerns conflicting land use applications and former partnership disputes, she began. Corbin cleared his throat. There's also a matter of intellectual property shared during marriage. That could affect zoning variance rights. Celine didn't let him finish. She turned to the arbitrator, opened her binder, and slid across the signed waivers. Prenuptial agreements, separate corporate filings, dated schematics from my own firm. There's no overlap. I'm not seeking damages. I'm protecting the project. The arbitrator scanned the documents. Corbin looked thrown. You're representing yourself? Celine didn't look at him. She focused forward. I've already won. This isn't about reclaiming what's his. It's about protecting what's mine. The arbitrator nodded. After 30 minutes, the meeting adjourned, with no claims granted to Corbin. On her way out, Celine paused at the elevator. Corbin followed. You're not the same, he said. She looked at him for the first time all morning. No. I finally matched the version of me you tried to suppress. You didn't have to do all this just to prove a point. I didn't, she said quietly. I did it because I liked who I became without you. That night, Celine hosted a small dinner for the civic team and interns. 10 people. One long table. No photographers. No designers. Just real food. Real laughter. Real legacy. When the last guest left, Dorian stayed behind to help clean up. He moved with ease in her space now, knew where the mugs went, how she liked the spices stacked. At one point, he paused, watching her from across the counter. You ever going to take your name off the door? Celine glanced at the etched glass pane near her home office. Caro Design Group. She smiled. No, but I might add another name next to it. He crossed the room. Quiet. Focused. Yours or mine. She let the moment sit, then leaned in and said, We'll draw up the plans together. You've just watched Celine Caro walk through betrayal. Without breaking. She didn't yell. She didn't beg. She didn't collapse. She observed. She chose silence over spectacle, strategy over chaos, and when the time was right, she didn't just move on. She moved up. Not every war needs a weapon. Sometimes, the sharpest revenge is becoming who they swore you'd never be. So here's what I want you to take from this story. If someone ever underestimated your calm, if someone tried to dim your light to make theirs shine, if you've ever had to start over while holding in tears no one saw, then this story was for you. Celine didn't need applause. She built her empire from quiet decisions. And that's what real power looks like. If her story meant something to you, even one part, do this. Like this video so more people find stories with dignity and depth. Comment your favorite moment. Was it the green dress? The dinner? The line at the gala? Share this with someone rebuilding after betrayal. And subscribe, because every week we bring you new stories where justice isn't loud, but it's final. This is Mr. Charles Stories, where we tell stories that don't need to scream to be heard. I'll see you in the next one.